In our age, there is no such thing as keeping out of politics. All issues are political issues, and politics itself is a mass of lies, evasions, folly, and hatred. And where do we really stand? Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation live right here at TV1, 9:30 p.m. We are coming to your doorstep to discuss about Sri Lanka's political landscape tonight on our show. We've invited three eminent personalities to our studios as always. Let me quickly introduce them to you. Joining us this evening is Maitri Gunratna, attorney at law, as well as General Secretary of the United National Freedom Front. Nice to have you on the show. Also joining us this evening is Dr. Harini Amarasuriya, Senior Lecturer, Open University. Nice to have you on the show as well. The only lady on the panel tonight. Also joining us this evening was one-time senior banker, Mr. Rusil Palathanakon. However, now is a councillor of the Colombo Municipal Council representing the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. Firstly, congratulations to you, Mr. Nakon, for being appointed to the council through the list. So let's start off tonight's show with Dr. Harini Amarasuriya, Senior Lecturer of the Open University of Colombo. Looking at what's happening right now in Sri Lanka, we're talking about the Sri Lankan political landscape. And then we're looking at a no-confidence motion that is going to be tabled against the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka. Is there a match between what's happening right now in the country and what is going to happen to the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka in a few days from now? What is your thought?
Well, I think it's a period of great uncertainty, and I think that's reflected in the fact that this no-confidence motion is also being brought in at this particular time. I think in very many ways the local government election has sort of thrown all the sort of existing balance of power into question. And in this sort of very uncertain kind of period, I think the sort of stability of the government is at stake here. And in a way, it has exposed the weaknesses, the inner weaknesses of all the mainstream political parties. And in many ways, has raised questions, I think, for the leadership of all the major parties, certainly of the two main parties in the current government, the UNP and the SLFP. So in that context, I think the no confidence motion that is being brought forward or is proposed to be presented against the Prime Minister actually will be a significant test for this government and for the UNP in particular.
Dr. Amarasuriya, in your opinion, when you really look at what happened during the last 3 years, we saw one of the biggest scandals, the bond scam, taking place. However, the no-confidence motion comes into play only after the local government election was over. How do you view this in particular? Is it the inability of the United National Party to not able to garner a certain amount of support from the public, or is it a motion that is being brought forward by the opposition just to oust the Prime Minister, who has been quite incompetent, if you could say, over the last 3 years?
Well, I think it's a reflection of the confidence that the opposition has gained through the local government election results. And I think it's also a sort of well, the opposition certainly sees it as an opportunity to test the waters, to test their own strength, and to put the onus on the Prime Minister to show that he can actually garner the support of the Prime Minister. So they have nothing to lose. The opposition has nothing to lose. Whereas for the government and for the Prime Minister in particular, it's a very significant threat and a very significant moment. So unless they can show that, and unless the Prime Minister can show that he still has the confidence of the majority in parliament, I mean, he's in great trouble. So the opposition, they're sensing a moment and they're sensing an opportunity.
The de facto leader of the joint opposition,
Yes.
of course, is former President Mahinda Rajapaksa. And from the 3 Rajapaksas who are in parliament, 2 have not signed the no confidence motion yet, and both of them being the former Speaker of Parliament, Chamal Rajapaksa, and the former President himself, Mahinda Rajapaksa, who have not signed the no confidence motion yet. How do you view this?
So I'm not at all surprised. This is sort of running true to form. I think Mahinda Rajapaksa has proven himself to be extremely adept at presenting different versions of himself to different constituencies. So within parliament he behaves in one way, to the public he behaves in another way, within his party he probably behaves in another way. So I think this is the man, and I'm not at all surprised, because I think in previous occasions also, whenever things have come, push has come to shove within parliament in crucial debates, whatever he has said outside, within parliament he has pretty much toed the line. So I am not at all surprised that he has not signed the no confidence motion.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harini Amarasuriya, Senior Lecturer of at the Open University. The only 2 words that I remember from the entire 3 minutes that you spoke was the man. So thank you very much. I now move my attention to Mr. Maitri Gunrathan, who is also attorney at law, General Secretary of the United National Freedom Front. I want to take you back a few weeks ago. Your party was very confident to win at least 100 seats at the recently concluded local government elections and ended with only 21. Maitri, how do you view this? Isn't this a defeat itself to your party?
Well, I concede it's not a glorious victory, but the reason for it, Samil, I mean, I don't think even any political analyst thought that there was going to be a landslide for the Sri Lanka Podujana Perumuna, or the party which Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa led. That was from all provinces. It was as if people had secretly come to a deal without any political party coming to know as to how they were going to vote. On the 10th of February, they cast their vote and they showed they are completely displeased with the manner in which things are being done. And I would go further to say, in 2015, when the people defeated the former president, I feel they wanted to only teach him a lesson by voting less. No one thought he was going to lose. But they only wanted to teach him a lesson by giving him a very, very slim majority in winning that election. But unfortunately, that did not work. He lost the election. Having lost the election, people turned to be very sympathetic towards him. And after 2015, this was the only election where the people could have shown their gratitude towards him, and that's why they have responded in this manner. Adding more fuel to that was the hilarious FCID fiascos, where he was taken for questioning, his wife was taken in for questioning, the sons were taken in for questioning, the mother-in-law, everyone, all the full family was taken in for questioning, and ultimately hardly anything came out of it. It was only an opportunity for them to come before the media and draw some more sympathy towards their cause and towards this result they got on the 10th of February 2018. So I feel because of this wind which was going towards them, that as a new party, people took a last minute decision last minute decision that they will vote with whatever the trend which was building up. They were going to vote with the trend which was building up, and they voted, people who were supposed to vote for us also voted with the Sri Lanka Potijana Perumuna, and that's why I think our performance was a bit low. And
I want to pose a question to you, Maitri. I've always been thinking about these political dynasties. You see the Rajapaksas coming through, you see the Ranatungas coming through, you see the Bandaranayakas coming through, and now I tend to feel that even the Gunaratnas are trying to come into the forefront, because I see your son's name in the Colombo Municipal Council list this time around, and the name has been gazetted.
Yes.
Is that something that you're also trying to achieve in the long run, without taking into account the wishes of the public at large?
No, it is not like that. The whole decision was given to a special committee which went through the people who have won. None of the candidates won any seat in the Colombo Municipal Council. It was on the percentage that we had got one seat there, and the committee which went into it had gone into it and chosen the most eligible person who is qualified to go into the council.
Is there a coincidence?
Yeah, there is a coincidence. They asked me. I said, as long as the decision is coming from the committee which was going to decide on that, I of course did not go to object. I mean, if the committee decided, well, I said you can go ahead with it, because he was not imported. The name was on the list, and that's how we came to go into the council.
Thank you very much, Attorney at Law Maitri Gunarathan, General Secretary of the United National Freedom Front. He was also a former member of the Southern Provincial Council of the United National Party at one point before he was ousted from the United National Party a few years ago. I now move my attention to Mr. Rusiripala Tennakon, who was once a senior banker. Mr. Tennakon, whether you like it or not, I must remind you that the views that you're going to express tonight on the show would be a reflection of the views that would be expressed by SLF peer, and not as a civil rights activist, as you've done before on this very show. So you have to be very responsible of the statements that you make, as usual, and I thought I just should remind you this before we start tonight's show. So starting off, Mr. Tennakon, now you have been appointed as a councillor to the Colombo Municipal Council. What sort of changes can you bring in as a professional on the context of the corruption-riddled Colombo Municipal Council that has been running the show for many, many years? Let's take a look at the bond scam that took place. Let's look at the no confidence motion that is now going to be tabled in a few days from now against the Prime Minister. Given all these factors, how do you can bring in some change to the Council in the next few years? Your time starts now.
Yeah, I must first of all thank you for reminding me about the restrictions that I'll be bound by.
More than the restrictions, the responsibility that you have on your shoulders now.
Yes. But then in a way, I feel sorry if there is any curtailment to express my own views and personal views on any issue. There's going to be any sort of restriction or sort of binding on me because of the position that I have. I really regret it, because I wish to express myself freely as possible, of course in keeping with the ideals of the party or the leaders with whom we have to work within those limits. But I would rather like to be a free, outspoken person even in the municipality. That is the role that I wish I could play. But coming back to the current situation, I think we are all in a dilemma. You see, we have a government still running, composed of the two major parties, although they appear to be on the dividing line, not yet separated. So in that context, with pending no confidence motions, with several other pending burning issues which are rather very hot in the political arena, things are going to be a little difficult for a council like the Colombo Municipality Council, which is one of the most important, crucial places in the country today. Of all the local government bodies, I think Colombo Municipality has to play a leading role. So whatever we do, whatever we think of as plans for the future, as the constituent members of different parties in the council who are selected or elected to the council, we'll have to be mindful about the political scenario of the country.
Mr. Nakon, we saw many statements being made by Sri Lanka Freedom Party senior members like S.B. Dissanayake saying that they would support the no confidence motion against the Prime Minister in Parliament. And then you had meetings being held with the President himself about the no confidence motion again that is going to be tabled. What is the actual position? It gives mixed signals to people as to whether Sri Lanka Freedom Party is still with the government or not. And you said that you want to express your views freely. So how do you view this? Isn't this a mixed signal that is being put out to the public?
Samir, whether we like it or not, you know, the experience that we got in from January onwards for two major opposition parties to work together for the sake of the country, considering the situation that we were in at the time they came to power. You see, we just cannot think of parting our ways for the sake of an individual or some very separate or rather limited issue. It doesn't, the bringing up of a no confidence motion here in the present context is, for me, it appears to be a very, very personal thing. It is against the Prime Minister himself and not a party as such. So therefore, if at this moment of time, if the Prime Minister decides, well, I should not face this no confidence motion, there is enough ground for me to accept that there have been lapses, shortcomings and certain things wanting on my part as the Prime Minister or the leader. If he decides to say resign and not face the no confidence motion, still the SLFP and the UNP can go ahead with as two parties together, working together for the benefit of the country.
And you mean to say that the Prime Minister would resign? Isn't that a bit too...
I was trying to butt in there.
No, I mean, this is...
I'm looking at
be
really optimistic now.
Very daydreaming.
No, I'm looking at things that are happening in the world politics.
We don't.
That is something that should happen in democracy, in a democracy. I'm looking at it that way.
Yeah.
Even at the last moment,
definitely.
you see now, you take Margaret Thatcher. She was the 7th longest serving Prime Minister in UK. When there was a confusion coming, something levelled against her, she decided to leave. She respected the opinion of the others in the party. See, so therefore, such things are not very remote from us, you know. History, it has so many events like that, and even in the current situation, if the democracy demands that, he should seriously consider, without putting the country into serious trouble, without putting the party into serious trouble. If he decides today, well, I will stand down, allow the party to continue, I can even give my blessings to the party as a leader from behind the scene. I mean, if something like that happens, it's a blessing.
Like President
daydreaming.
It's a blessing for the party. I mean, Lee Kuan Yew, when he was very old, you see, he could still have gone for a few more years.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Few more years, but he decided to step down.
Thank you very much, Mr. Risibal Tendakon, councillor representing the Sri Lanka Freedom Party at the Colombo Municipal Council. The council is to sit on the 26th of March with a lot of public money being spent at the end of the day. This time around, it's going to be held at the BMICH, whose money is going to be spent. That's the money of you and me. Let's start off tonight's show. On my immediate left is Shailta Fernando. On my far left, today is Nadim Majid, usually sits on the right side of the bench, but today at a very distance. So let's start off tonight's show with Nadim.
Thank you, Shamir. I'd like to start with Mr. Maitri Gunaratna. You mentioned FCID fiascos. However, as we found out from the Sunday papers yesterday, the FCID has been quite busy over the past 3 years, at least as far as the highly controversial MIG deal is concerned. So you speak of these fiascos, but there is work being done, isn't there?
But what is the outcome?
It's an ongoing investigation.
Nothing.
Information has come to light.
Criminal investigations, right? You can investigate, find all the material, report facts to the magistrate, get the person who needs to be arrested and produced before court. That is how a criminal investigation happens. But instead of that, what the FCID and the CID and all these police organizations, what they were doing was, they were giving an opportunity for the opposition to come and completely tear the government into pieces. Right? So that's what I say. Now, for instance, we'll say all these cases are involving public funds, public property, right? And if anyone wants any B report, any facts, any B report can be submitted with the Public Property Act being brought in. Moment the Public Property Act is brought in, person is arrested, he does not get bail from the magistrate's court unless there is exceptional circumstances. It is only that then you get bail.
So we saw yesterday Deputy Minister, beg your pardon, State Minister Dr. Harsha De Silva saying something along the lines of, through this election result, the local government election result, we've seen that the people are miffed with us because we haven't been catching the thieves. So now that they've seen the election result, do you think that the thieves will be caught?
I don't think. Because I feel that even the FCID they have not done proper investigations, they have not collected proper documentation, and they say that files have gone to the Attorney General's department. What has the Attorney General department done for such a long time? Apparently there are 50 files where they have finished investigations and sent into the Attorney General's department.
So this is where the problem lies, isn't it? I mean, you mentioned about these so-called fiascos, but we have seen that the FCID has completed its investigations and submitted files to the Attorney General. So isn't this a problem within the Attorney General's department itself?
Either the FCID investigations do not warrant indictments or charges, and that's why they can't file charges. That's why the Attorney General is silent. Or otherwise, if there is cogent
evidence. Let me ask you this question. Given what we've found out over the past week, especially regarding the FCID's investigation into this MIG deal, do you feel that that's true? That the FCID's investigations don't warrant indictments?
I mean, if it does, why is the Attorney General still sleeping over it? I mean, he's the Attorney General, the main law officer of the state. FCID has done investigation. I mean, it doesn't take a long time to study a file and see whether there is a charge, there is a charge or not.
Isn't it a shame? Because when this issue first came up in the papers in the year 2006, following an expose made by the Sunday Times, you saw a journalist who was revealing on these incidents like Rasat Wickrematunge being murdered. You saw right after that the Sunday leader, which highlighted these facts, had to go and apologize in the Mount Lebanon Magistrates Court, stating that they are very sorry for tarnishing the image of the former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa with regard to this MIG deal. However, now look at the exposes that are coming out, and isn't it a shame? Mustn't we be ashamed as a country that we've been hiding the past and putting everything under the carpet every single time an issue has cropped up in this island nation?
No, I mean, now MIG deal, 10 years from the time of its exposure. Today is 2018. I mean, where have they got? Where have they gone? It is still a situation where they are only saying, shoving allegations against each and everyone. Now, to my knowledge, there are no documentation even with regard to the MIG deal. Who is responsible for that? With regard to the MIG deal, there are no documentation. Even if there is a case, how do you prove a case without the documentation?
It has been reported that when the FCID had gone to Ukraine and asked the Prosecutor General as to whether this is a government-to-government deal, the Prosecutor General has said, what is the deal that we're talking about? Which year has this even been signed?
Yeah, so
what are you talking about? Isn't it a shame? And we have these planes parked in our backyard.
No, but from what I know, these planes were made use of during the last stages of the war, and they helped to finish the war in a very big way. This was told to me by a pilot who was in charge of this squadron of planes.
But Mr. Gunaratna, our problem is not with the procurement of armaments.
Yeah.
During a time of war, as far as logic and reason demands is necessary, procuring armaments is necessary and it should be done. But the problem here is the roguish and unscrupulous way in which they have profiteered out of a war. That is where the problem lies.
Yeah, now we'll take for instance the MiG deal. We'll assume there has been profiteering from the MiG deal. At least they purchased the MiGs, they finished the war. What about the bond scam? Here it is open and shut case where billions of rupees have been squandered. Right? What is happening with regard to that? Does it take such a long time to take action against them?
No, I want to shift my attention to Dr. Harini Amarasuriya. Do you think that the argument that is being brought forward by Maitri Gunaratna holds still? Because he's saying that, okay, we brought those and we finished the war. However, the bond scam is of course very big.
Not that I'm trying to justify it. But what I'm saying is, well, there is no material. It is only allegations. But notwithstanding that, they bought the planes, they finished the war. That was in 30 years of war, we have ended. But today,
$6 billion have been made out of as a profit, Mr. Gunaratna, by the 2006
I mean, these are only allegations.
This is not allegations, this is in paper. This was the expose that was uncovered
where is the proof that 10 years they have not been able to prove it?
So
10 years.
My question
They
to
proved
Dr.
that the agreement that was signed with these three companies is false, and that there was no such agreement. The original copy of that agreement is missing at the Air Force headquarters.
And a chair in London, and that's about it. But my attention moves to Dr. Amarasuriya. How do you recollect all these events that have transpired? Let's talk about the last 12 years in this country. Isn't it a shame? Mustn't we be as citizens ashamed of what we have put our country into? The last 12 years.
No, I think it's an absolute shame and an absolute disgrace that that we have come to a stage where we are sort of looking at the relative merit of corruption. It's saying, you know, okay, well, with the MiG deal, they at least won the war. But with this, you know, what have we gained? So a little bit of corruption is okay if the outcome is, you know, is for the greater good of the country. I mean, that to me, yeah, that to me is a sort of a very pathetic, ridiculous situation if that is the way in which we are talking about corruption. Yeah. So, I mean, I find it hugely problematic that that we are coming to a position that we are within a political culture now where we are sort of grading levels of corruption and coming to a sort of a discussion about which level of corruption is acceptable or not, right? So I think this is the problem with our political system currently, and I think when we talk about why these investigations are not moving forward or why action is not being taken, I think it is what we forget is we assume that these institutions such as the FCID, Attorney Generals or whatever it is, are able to work independently and do as they want. I think let's face reality, that's not how things work. Any kind of investigation, any kind of activity is politically also, it's within a political system that these kinds of initiatives go forward or don't go forward. So if we look at why things are not happening with regard to FCID or why the investigations, I mean, I think from what I can understand, there is enough to move forward. There's enough for prosecution. There's enough evidence to go for. If it's not going forward, then there is a reason. There's a political reason for it. And the political reason, in my view, is the fact that the political class in this country is one front. For me, there's no distinction to be made between any party. They are all protecting each other. So the minute you start investigating and unraveling something, that whole class will collapse, and they will not let that happen.
Ms. Senekon, I want to drag your attention to this, the foreign passport holders of these countries who are taking big office. We're talking about Arjun Mahendran, who is a Singapore national, but we're forgetting the fact that former Defense Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa is also a US citizen. Why isn't these issues not being brought up? Is it because you say the joint opposition are very good in marketing their proposition very well, and the government in power is very bad in marketing whatever they have in their hands? Is this the reason?
I think both sides are equally bad from my point of view. I don't say that joint opposition is better or the current government is in a bad position. Both they stand in the same way. But I want to mention one thing before I come to answer Samir. Something that Maitri was suggesting about this 10 years of investigation into MiG. Did we have a 10-year-old investigation into the MiG?
Yeah, from the time it was purchased.
The incident has taken place 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But you know, the investigation proper per se started only in 2015 and long after.
No.
If you say that there was an investigation ongoing during that time, I think it is wrong.
No.
Totally wrong. I don't agree with you.
The MiG deal was exposed by the newspapers in 2007, 2008.
Exposition is one thing, investigation is another thing.
Right. So when
now we are talking about the investigation, Maitri, so we should not confuse this. The investigate, we should not sort of embarrass the investigators in this country. I hold great respect to them, you know, the difficulties with which they are working. The political influence, the political pressure, and people trying to buy over things and then influence them, all that is there. But with all that, they have gone a long way. The present exposure that we have been given about the MiG deal is fairly sufficient information for us to presume without any doubt to see that there has been a huge plundering of the country's monies. That has happened. So therefore this I don't agree with you about this 10-year long investigation. The investigations are very fresh. They would have started long after 2015, and the length that they have traversed so far is not unsatisfactory considering the difficulties that they have to surmount.
Now, you can respond to that if you want to, if you wish to.
No, but what I'm saying is, Samir, this was exposed 2007, 2008, right? So then, if this is of such magnitude, the information was there at that time, right? And if they say that they have only investigated it in 2015, right? Then obviously you have left a lot of time.
But it was the government in power. You knew that it was President Mahinda Rajapaksa's brother who was the defense secretary, and his
the people who were accused were in power. So what investigation?
Do you expect justice to happen
even from 2015 to 2018? What have they bought out?
So at least now something is rolling through.
Yeah, I can't see any cogent material which has been bought out.
Dr. Amar Surya, yes.
I can't see any cogent material.
But I think this is precisely the problem. I think if the FCID, the Attorney's Department are allowed to function independently, things could have moved much faster. What we are learning is that they are not. And that is through no fault of individuals within those departments. It's a problem of the entire system where our institutions are no longer independent. So I don't think it's at all surprising that even though we all knew there was something fishy going on about this whole MiG deal in 2007, that till 2015, 2016, investigation proper didn't happen, and that took a change of government. I mean, that shouldn't be how things happen. It can't be that when you're...
But Dr. Amar Surya, do you really feel that it is to do with independence and not with the people in these institutions? Because we see that For example, the 19th Amendment gave a great deal of independence to these various independent commissions and law enforcement authorities. But in spite of that, we still haven't seen, there are still allegations that are leveled at the Attorney General's department. I mean, even with the bond scam, one of the reasons that many activists who were fighting, including Mr. Tennakoon, didn't want the Prime Minister to shuffle this into the Attorney General's department is because it's widely considered as a place where case files go to gather dust, and which hence prompted the appointment of the Presidential Commission of Inquiry. So is it really a matter of independence, or is it a lack of will on the part of the officials in these agencies and departments?
No, I think it's largely a matter of lack of independence. I don't say that's the only one, right? I think there's also problems of capacity and skill, especially with regard to financial crimes of this nature. I think it requires resources and skills that perhaps we don't have. There's also, I think, a huge problem in our judiciary, in the way in which the speed of cases is not just about these cases. I mean, just an ordinary investigation takes so much time, and there's so much. And I think the lack of independence is not something new. This has become institutionalized in our country.
A solution to this has been proposed in the form of a special court. Yeah. Do you think that this will resolve the problem, or will that?
No, I beg to disagree with Mr. Amarasuri. What I am saying is, it is the lack of will, not the because first of all they bought the independent commissions, saying that people are not independent. You have to have independent commissions for these people to function. Now independent commissions are in place. So then, what is the problem with regard to all these organizations functioning on their own without any problem? It is just the lack of will, and people in these institutions are also playing politics. That is the main reason why nothing is happening.
Mr. Tennakoon, do you really think that the joint opposition could muster the kind of support to unseat the Prime Minister? And are they really serious about it? Because some can argue that it might favor them if you have a weak government.
Yeah. Yes, I cannot comment on it, because the way how things have been happening in the past is very causes so many doubts in the minds of people, from outside when we look at things. Sometimes it can be an indirect support to get out of this problem and clear the Prime Minister of this accusation. If the no confidence fails, if it has been shabbily brought forward for the sake of bringing something, and then if it is not successful, that might help him to continue. So therefore, I don't look at it as if it is a panacea for all these things. There can be various lines to attach to it. There can be, but on the other hand, it also can be a genuine effort to bring out certain things they are dealing with the Parliament. Parliament is our supreme place. So Parliament is the place where you can bring a motion like this. There nothing else. Where else can they do this? So, but the way that they have framed the sort of charges against the Prime Minister or on this no-confidence motion, I can see that there is a lot of serious thoughts have gone into it. Although there are several other things that they have not omitted in that, but going through the newspaper reports, we have not seen the proposal, the no-confidence motion as yet in the proper form, but reading the newspaper items and the releases that they have made so far, we can see that a lot of thinking has gone into it just to sort of frame certain charges which are specific and which are to the point, which have been discussed openly.
I don't agree with what Mr. Tennakoon says. I see it that if it is in the interest of the joint opposition that this Prime Minister remains in the same place he is, because it is due to that they got this kind of mandate after 3 years. So therefore, it is in the detriment to the joint opposition to get rid of this Prime Minister. So therefore, they will filibuster this no confidence motion, and they would want a lame, impotent government to continue for the next 18 months, so that in 2019 or 20, when there is another election, come a presidential election, come a parliamentary election, they will win romping home.
So are you trying to say that Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe is the best bet for the future of Sri Lanka right now?
Not the best. He's the worst choice. But the joint opposition will want to keep him there because it will strengthen their position without doing any action. By just waiting, they will get popular. What a better situation.
Mr. Gunaratne, yesterday on the Ceylon Today newspaper, they highlighted the NG Panditharatna report.
Yeah.
An internal committee of the UNP which had suggested reforms. This was way back in 2004. And according to Ceylon Today, this dossier had been kept secret for 14 years.
Yeah.
This report paints the party leadership, at which time you were a member of that party, in a very poor light, and speaks of its inability to communicate with the grassroots of the UNP. Why do you think that this was kept secret for so long, and were you privy to this report?
Yeah, I have the report with me.
When it was drafted?
I got the report after 2010 because this report never saw the light of day.
Why not?
Because this report says that if Ranil Wickremesinghe continues, that the party will lead the party into a catastrophe. This is what at page 27 the leader's response to the request is extremely important because it will most likely determine the future of the leader and of the party. If negatively responded, it will most likely be an invariable catastrophe for the party.
There were 17 members in this report.
Yeah, this is the Panditharatna Commission report.
There are 17 members. It was a 17-member committee, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, members of the committee.
Is this a unanimous opinion of all 17 members?
Yes, and Prime Minister's one of his main advisors, Dinesh Virakodi, is also a member of the committee. Dinesh Virakodi.
So why did it take so long for this to come out? Who stifled it?
I don't think nothing this ever came out.
But it was the working committee
never came out. This was in 2004. Then there was another report, the R.S. Jayaratna report in 2009. Now I will read a part of that. In 2009, that is also interesting. At page 10, the issue of leadership has become so critical, which should have been resolved much earlier and should be done without further postponement. This is in 2009. So none of these reports saw the light of day, and there is another report which has been done in the last 2 weeks. In the last 2 weeks, that report also will never see the light of day.
Now you were a former UNPer,
yes.
right? Now assuming that Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe moves out and gives way for a new leadership.
Are you dreaming?
I'm saying
I love the
assuming.
optimism that is been
I'm saying
emanating from
assuming.
this, from the
You have to
social life.
assume are you dreaming?
I'm saying assuming
Okay.
it happens because there are rumors that something can happen on the 23rd.
No, that is all
Right. So
diversion tactics.
What are the options available for the UNP for a new leadership looking at the presidential election?
There is a gentleman by the name of Dhanapala in the UNP who is a peon. Even if he is appointed, it is better than this person.
Do you have? Is the UNP? Can the UNP field someone who can contend or compete with someone of the caliber of Gotabaya Rajapaksa?
Well, I suppose the UNP can. You don't underestimate the UNP.
But Charu, you are aware that Gotabaya Rajapaksa can't contest an election in Sri Lanka because he's a dual citizen.
But what I'm saying is, don't underestimate the UNP. Even
do you see a new leadership in the horizon?
Well, there are so many people in the UNP who can take over and run. But unfortunately,
you once supported someone and then he let you down.
No. He has not let me down. He's there. He's the deputy leader. He's the deputy leader. So he's all prepared, I suppose, to take the baton and run.
We're now going for a short commercial break. I'm not mentioning who, however. Maitri says the deputy lead now. Again, I'm not going to mention the names. We're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's Face the Nation. Stay connected, stay with us. We will be right back. Welcome back. You're with Face the Nation. I want to drag my attention to Dr. Harini Amalsuri, senior lecturer at the Open University. Dr. Amalsuri, when we had the Constitutional Council that came into play after the 19th Amendment of the Constitution. We thought all members which the Council is going to appoint would be individuals who will really take the country forward. However, I want to take your attention now to the present Inspector General of Police, because of whom many incidents have really backfired on Sri Lanka as a whole. We saw him trying to have yoga classes. We saw him saying, sir, 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 don't worry, I won't do it. I don't know who he called sir at that point in that public platform. You saw the recent unrest that took place, which he is to be blamed. Now you start wondering.
Wine and meditation.
Now you start wondering, the appointments that are made by the Constitutional Council itself, is that right?
Yeah,
The time starts now.
So don't forget that the Constitutional Council that we have is not the Constitutional Council that was initially anticipated through the 19th Amendment. One of the many amendments to the 19th Amendment was to actually weaken the composition of the Constitutional Council by making sure that the independent members are in the minority.
Yeah.
So it is still dominated by appointees, which negates the whole point of having such a Constitutional Council. So let's not forget that this Constitutional Council is.
But sorry for butting in, but I think the decisions have been unanimous.
Decisions
Up to now,
and anyway, whatever dissent we have, whatever discussions that have gone inside, we have no way of knowing how the decision.
Because now there is talk about trying to give this top cop in the police department a diplomatic posting, because if not, he or she has to be impeached. This was reported on the Sunday newspapers. I don't know who this top cop is, but looks like the Inspector General of Police at the moment.
Okay, so I'm not aware of that's what you just said about.
He can be sent to Swaziland.
But I mean, certainly, but once again, I think the recent events, the most recent events in Kandy, once again show us the huge problems with our law enforcement authorities, right? And whether the IGP was directly involved or not, he is responsible for law and order. And the fact that it took so long to restore law and order has to ultimately be his responsibility. So I think Mr. Tennakoon talked about the culture of resigning when things go wrong, but I think in our country that certainly does not happen.
Certainly not with the public official.
Certainly not with public officials, certainly not with elected officials. Elected officials resign and then come in through some other means, and then, before you know it, they're back on the scene, right? So this again, once again, I would go back to this idea of the kind of political culture that we've established over the last several decades of lack of accountability, impunity, not taking responsibility for actions, and this whole attitude that whatever you do, you can get away with it, right? That you can, do whatever, whether it's murder, rape, robbery, anything, you can get away with it. And that is, I think, one of the most dangerous aspects that we currently experience, which is one of the greatest threats to democracy. So until we can kind of really confront that and change that culture of absolute arrogance of those in power, right, the absolute sort of level of unconcern for the views of the people, I think that there's not much that we can really expect.
Dr. Amar Surya, I'm particularly posing this question to you because of the recent statement that was issued by Minister Kabir Hashim, saying that it's not his son but a relative who was embroiled in this incident where a high luxury car had gone and dived itself to the Devan Nawaya, and his relative was involved in it, and justice has to be meted out. And the police took over 24 hours to arrest this individual.
Exactly.
And we know that in 24 hours you can't even see whether the individual in question was drunk or not, because that's not going to be even in the blood.
No, because the default response of any sort of law enforcement authority is to how you respond to a situation is based on who you are. That's the default position.
Because he has now been subject to a medical examination, and the medical examination will come up saying nothing is wrong.
Yeah, it shouldn't take Minister Kabir Hashim to come out and say, you know, take whatever action for the police to get activated, no? That should not, I mean, why should he even, it's not necessary
at all.
Why should he even have to say that?
Thank you very much.
But Samir, now
I'll come back to Maithili. You can hold on to your horses a minute. I'll get back to you in a minute. I want to move to Mr. Rusirpal Thennakoon now, who's a member of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party in Municipal Council. He's representing the Sri Lanka Colombo Municipal Council now. Mr. Thennakoon, unfortunately, I'm not satisfied with the answer you gave before, because we are talking about a so-called marriage with the United National Party and the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. We saw right after the election there was a huge aho about a split within these two main political parties. The Sri Lanka SLF, the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, going to join hands with Sri Lanka Pudujana Peramuna. We saw meetings taking place, and then we hear Mahinda Amaraveera mentioning in Parliament, nothing is wrong, we will continue this government until 2020, everything is hunky-dory now. However, now you see another mixed signal coming from senior ministers from the Sri Lanka Freedom Party itself saying about a no-confidence motion. Now, what exactly is happening with Sri Lankan politics? Are all these people getting their signals wrong, or what's happening?
I think this is a very, very clear example of, you know, the politicians having to yield to the pressure from the society. You know, this unity government came up because of the social movement that was that was active during that time, and there was no way for the people, the party leaders and the different political parties to circumvent that situation. Therefore, they had to come together, form a so-called national government, then call it unity, call it Lichavi, call it all the names, and then try to. But what they did was entirely different. Each party, mainly the UNP, was from day one was trying to outbeat their coalition partner. They have taken over the most important portfolios in the cabinet. All important portfolios have been taken by them. The economy entirely was taken over by them. There was a mixture of an unforeseen or never before type mixture of assignment of functions to the ministries was done by this Prime Minister, bringing the central bank under the economic development, taking it away from the finance ministry, bringing the employees provident fund also along with that into the network, the nexus, and then bringing the employees trust fund under his control, doing a hell of a lot of things which were unprecedented in this country. So these things have led to the complication that a marriage which could have been very successfully continued had to be disturbed in that form. All due to the way how the UNP reacted and how they tried to manage their affairs in that unity government. If they really forgot about the next elections, and if they were really concerned about the country and the people, certainly, most certainly, they would have lived up to the requirements and the expectations of the people of this country.
Mr. Thennakoon, I want to ask you a question because you said that you're going to be very candid with your thoughts. I thought I'll pose a question to you. I saw a picture of 12 members of the Colombo Municipal Council representing from the Sri Lanka Freedom Party meeting the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, and I saw your picture as well, and that's how I recollected that you are appointed as a CMC member from the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. In this meeting, what sort of issues really cropped up? Did you all speak about the corruption that is taking place, or did you all even mention the fact that are we supposed to support the UNP, or are we not supposed to support the UNP in the Colombo Municipal Council? Was this issue in any way taken up at the meeting?
So, you know, that was a very preliminary sort of a discussion, and that was the first time we met and saw who these guys who were selected in the list was, you know, and then and then we were discussing about the mundane issues. You know, the most of the councillors were ex-members of the Colombo Municipality Council, and they all were used to a certain pattern of things that were happening in the Colombo Municipality. For me, it was a completely a new experience.
You were only there for 10 minutes, I heard, and then you had gone to China.
Yes, no, I went to India. I had to
okay.
leave. But then with the little time that I spent with the colleagues, I found that, our concerns were really rather mundane and, more routine. And I could also imagine the things that could have been happening for the last 50 years in the municipality, So if this is going to happen for the during our term also, I'll be regretting my position.
Let's see whether Maitri Gunaratna's son can bring out some optimism and some vigor to the mundane issues that is being discussed at the council. My question to Maitri Gunaratna, General Secretary of the National Freedom Front, is following up with a statement that was delivered by now State Minister Dr. Harsha De Silva. He says that, of course not, we will not support the no confidence motion that is going to be tabled against the Prime Minister in Parliament. That is 100%. However, we agree that there needs to be a change in the restructure of the United National Party. Now, you have defected the UNP, or you were ousted. Let us be very frank.
Removed.
You were removed. You were removed, sacked, fired. You can say anything, but you were a part of the UNP at one point, and then you were removed. As an individual who was hearing the statement made by Dr. Harsha De Silva, being an outsider now, what did you gather when he said, yes, we will not support the Premiership, Prime Minister will support him to continue, but there has to be a change in the party leadership?
Yeah. I think height of hypocrisy. Harsha De Silva, after the defeat, went and told him in a very, he says polite manner, right, that he should go. And if you take all the reports which Ranil Wickremesinghe, who himself has appointed, have asked him to go. So if Harsha De Silva, being a professor, cannot read and understand these reports, then there is something wrong with his doctorate also. So what I am saying is, none of the people in the UNP have the guts to stand up and tell him to go. If everyone gets up and says you go, he will have to go. Or if they don't support him, he will have to go, because otherwise one thing is they don't love the UNP, second thing is they don't love the country, because him not going has caused this huge problem today. Today there is no governance in this country.
Exactly.
Today the people have been told that there is a cabinet reshuffle for the last 6 weeks. This cabinet reshuffle has not come forward. What is the meaning? Where is the governance? There is no governance. Either they make the cabinet reshuffle before this year, before the end of this month, or the best thing to do is to get a 2/3 majority and dissolve Parliament and go for a fresh election. Get a fresh mandate. If they can't get rid of the Prime Minister, if the UNP members like Harsha De Silva coming and saying no, he should stay and he should not go, they are blowing hot and cold. What is the meaning, Sabri? What is the meaning? Right? So if they cannot govern, this country cannot suffer.
Do you think UNP members would support the no confidence motion? Because we hear Partha Rangabandara openly criticizing the leadership.
Yeah.
We heard Vasantha Seranayake saying this is all a play now, it's all a drama now. Do you think that UNPers would support the no confidence motion?
I am telling this with responsibility. Partha Rangabandara was summoned and they wanted to give him money to shut up. Right? Vasantha Seranayake was summoned and promised to give money for him to
take responsibility for the statement that you're making.
I take full responsibility. So, what about the others? What about, I know that Mr. Partha Rangabandara is not going to do that. I know Vasantha Seranayake is not going to do that. Right? But the others, it's all, I mean, after the bond scam, after the coal deal, 500 million, 1,000 million is nothing to be in power, to be the Prime Minister. Because as Mr. Usripala Tennakon said, he very clearly said, there is a total mix-up in the assignment of ministries and subjects. Right? The finance ministry should have the central bank, but the central bank has gone with the Prime Minister. Prime Minister has taken the EPF. Prime Minister has taken the ETF. So, isn't this a design? Isn't this premeditated conduct with regard to the robbery of the central bank. If they have taken the, if he has taken the central bank to his
insurance fund,
insurance fund, central bank, EPF, ETF, all coming under him, and today we are all looking up and seeing what is happening.
Thank you very much.
I mean, this is meaningless.
So I open the floor for questions from our journalists. So let's start off with Charita.
Thank you, Shamil. Mr. Tenakul, now as Mr. Gunaratne said, we are still awaiting the balance reshuffle of the government from the SLFP side, and all economic decisions, President said that it has to be channeled through him. Now, if you look at the situation of investors who are already with the BOI in discussion stage, they don't know whether the current minister who is heading a particular ministry would be the same in another week's time, right? So what is all this, what is the signal that we are projecting to the outside world?
Sarita, I don't know whether people in this country really wanted the cabinet reshuffle. I don't know who brought this cabinet reshuffle idea. These are all hoodwinking tactics to direct the attention, focus the attention of the people into other areas. This is what has been perpetrated and calculatedly done. Nobody wanted a cabinet reshuffle. What they wanted was this Prime Minister to leave, go out, and the UNP and the SLFP, and if possible the joint opposition, everybody to get together, at least for the rest of the period that is left now. Take this country forward, bring in the investments, take some meaningful steps to alleviate the poverty in this country. So these are the things that we wanted, expected, and you see now we are all thinking about what so many things have been found by the CID and transferred to the given to the Attorney General's department. Take the hedging case. We have all forgotten the hedging matter. This was one of the first matters to be dealt with by the FCID. I went before the FCID, made a complaint at the very beginning about the hedging, because I was one outspoken person bringing out certain things about people who were involved in the hedging matter, who were taken out at the expense of the perpetrators to foreign countries. They were kept in hotels there. Their bills were met by them. For them to come and support these hedging deals, hedging agreements, they are today in the topmost places, even under this government. Today, and handling the financial sector. One person is the general manager of a state bank. The other person is a general manager of a government-owned private bank. So where are we going? Whom are they hoodwinking? You see, they don't want to they don't want to bring the culprits to book. They don't want. They only want the survival established. For their survival to remain in force, they will do anything. They will sacrifice anything. Democracy, principles, morals, everything. That is the short and long of the story.
Chanda, I think he will have to join my party very soon because he can't remain in the SLFP.
No, I don't say anything against the SLFP. I did not say anything against the...
responsible for the whole thing. I think I certainly have another candidate for the column.
I want to make myself very clear. I did not put the SLFP into this category. I did not yet. I still think that the current president, should run for the second term and then make it a real national government to solve the problems and meet the expectations of the people. No one else.
Why should he run for a second term? He can do it now. He doesn't have to do it.
So he should pave the way for it.
No, he can do it now. He doesn't have to wait till another 2 years
no,
let the country go down further down the slippery slope. If he wants to have a joint opposition, if he wants to get the joint opposition, if he wants to get the SLFP, he wants to get the UNP, he can appoint a new Prime Minister. He can have a real national government.
Dr. Awan,
there is no problem. Too late. Nothing stopping him.
Is it still too late to revive the country? We just have 18 more months to go.
It's still not late.
Is it still too late?
It's still, you can still do it.
I'm an eternal optimist, right? But I mean, I really don't see much happening in the next 18 months. I think this is a crippled government now, and it's just it's in survival mode. I don't think we can expect much, and The two people on either side of me are representing political parties, so they will naturally defend their own parties. As a person who's not representing a party, I can quite freely say that I don't see any difference between any of these parties. I think they are all equally responsible for this mess that we are in, and the two central parties in this mess currently are the UNP and the SLFP, and they are equally complicit in all of this. I think the President and the Prime Minister have to take responsibility for the state of absolute anarchy that we are currently facing. We are unable to make a decision.
Agreed.
Right? One person says one thing, the next day it's reversed. Somebody says something, the 2 days later it's a completely different position that the government takes. So you talked about investors. Who's the investor who's going to come in this climate?
In their right mind.
In their right mind. I mean, the university sector has been is on strike for the last 2.5 weeks, and we are still not certain whether the Minister of Higher Education has been officially appointed or not, because the Gazette is not out.
So what do
right? So who do you negotiate with? Do they even care that the university system is actually not functioning for 2.5 weeks? Right. In the meantime, the Ministry of Higher Education is sending out SMSs encouraging people to take out loans to enter the non-state sector. I mean, what is this? So there's absolute chaos.
But there is a banner saying that there is a minister which has been appointed.
There is a banner, right?
Maybe they are too busy with highways.
And we were hoping that with this reshuffle, at least they will sort of divest the Ministry of Higher Education of highways, because that is the most ridiculous combination.
Higher education must be taken on a highway. That's the idea.
Right. So I mean, I really don't see much happening in the next 18 months, because I think they're just simply going to be on survival.
Dr. Abdul, you mentioned the strike. The
yes.
non-academic workers' strike that is ongoing currently, which has been going on now for more than 2.5 weeks. Of course, it was overshadowed by the unrest in Kandy and by other incidents that and the no confidence motion. So this is it's a very serious issue.
It's very serious.
The strike of the non-academic staff. Their demands are, let's say, by the perspective of many people in the public, are fairly just as well. Has there been even a meeting between the strikers and the authorities concerned?
Meeting with whom?
On the part of you, on the part of from your standpoint as an academic in the university, when you're looking at this thing happening, what has actually happened there? What sort of progress has been made in resolving that conflict, if any?
None, as far as I can understand. Nothing has shifted for the last 2.5 weeks. I understand that there was a meeting between the non-academic trade union, and I'm not sure whether it was with the Prime Minister, but it was in the Prime Minister's office, and what I heard was that nothing came out of that meeting, right? So this is really serious, you know. So I mean, the inability.
The reason that is quite farcical is because at the same time, I think it was a couple of days ago, we heard the health minister talking about how under the previous government they invested in infrastructure and mega infrastructure projects, but we felt that it's more important to invest in health and education.
Yeah, I can only laugh. I can only laugh because being in the sector, I know I know what kind of.
They said that it's very important to this government that they develop the human capital of this country.
As far as I am concerned, right now, my question is whether this ministry, whether this government represents the state higher education or private education. As far as I am concerned, they have not done anything to improve the situation of state education.
As an academic and as a political sort of
I'm not
observer.
apolitical. I'm not part of any political party.
Okay. As an impartial political observer, let's say, when you see this issue, of the cabinet, the allotment of ministries, how the subjects have been coupled together, higher education and highways,
assignments,
special assignments, when you look at the list of the 30 cabinet ministries, more.
It's
Almost 40, yeah, cabinet ministries. And when you consider the fact that this is something that has constantly been highlighted as an issue, from January 2015 right up to now, the public, members of parliament, members of civil society, academics, activists, everyone in the country has been questioning these ridiculous allocations of ministries. And still, after 2 reshuffles, or 1 reshuffle and 1 partial reshuffle, this has not been rectified. What does that tell you about the attitude of the government?
I think it reaffirms what I said right at the beginning, and that is that the political system in this country serves no one else but the political class, and that whatever decisions that are made currently are about the survival of the political class and not about anybody else. Exactly. Right? So I think the main reason why there is a unity government is nothing to do with the country. It's nothing to do with the interests of the people. It is because the 19th Amendment allows for a larger cabinet if you have a unity government. So which gives this government more cabinet posts. That is the only reason that this marriage has not ended up in divorce as yet. Nothing else.
I just want to add one thing to what Dr. said.
They're staying together for the children.
About this assignment thing, very interesting thing. You know, the Employees Trust Fund was brought under the Prime Minister on the first assignment distribution. Then, when Ravi Karunanayake was removed from his finance ministry, there was a reshuffle and a mix-up of subjects again, because he was made the foreign minister.
And
he
lotteries
was given the
went under the foreign
board.
ministry.
He was given the lotteries board and some other, things to the foreign ministry. And another thing happened, which went unnoticed. That ETF was transferred to Malik Samaravikrama's ministry from Prime Minister. I don't know, many people observed this. You can see that there was a concerted effort maintained by these people running the government, the team people, to keep certain portfolios and certain subjects within their entire control. Absolute control. I am telling this with authority and with facts.
And responsibility.
With responsibility. So, we can see
that
how
itself,
these things have been carefully planned out.
Indictment. That itself warrants an indictment against all these guys who are there, holding Prime Minister, International Investment Minister, all of them, right? And when money is large, 8.5 billion has been siphoned from the ETF.
Yeah.
For the central bank.
No, 8.5 is not the final calculation of the commission.
No, at least
the commission has very clearly said to determine the actual loss, forensic audit has to be done, without which they cannot ascertain or determine the total amount fully and completely. Nevertheless, they froze the amount to 8.1 billion plus another 2 billion with the private deals that has taken place, altogether to 11 billion, only on a superficial basis, demanding and warranting that a further investigation of a forensic nature should be conducted to determine the actual loss. And to make it worse, the chap who is now in jail, Kasun Palisena, he has issued a statement to the internet and then to the websites and said he has given unwittingly, he has told the public that the total profits that they have made by doing transactions only with 3 institutions, National Savings Bank, Provident Fund, Insurance Fund, runs to more than 40 billion rupees.
Mr. Gurratna, what do you think the role of the JVP would be in this, in the backdrop of the no confidence?
JVP has joined the event.
Why do you say that?
They are doing exactly what Ranil Wickremesinghe wants them to do.
So are
do you feel that the JVP will support this no confidence motion when it comes?
I'm surprised if they do.
What do you think, Mr. Tennakoon? What do you think?
They will support the no confidence
because either it's a do or die situation, but I'm surprised if they do it.
Of course, they will support.
They will support it. But will they support it only because they're comfortable in the knowledge that the rest of the MP want?
No, they need a simple majority in Parliament now. for the no confidence motion to come through.
Yes.
The UNP has majority of the seats. So let's say the TNA tilts towards the UNP, then the no confidence motion is going to be defeated.
That
so
is
what's
one
the
likely
point?
situation. That's one likely situation.
Is a pipe dream.
But we cannot forget the trend that is prevailing in the UNP right now, which has come to the open, which several MPs, ministers, ex-ministers speaking out.
May I say something? Because I think it is actually really unfortunate, because as far as I can see, this is a crisis of the UNP that is being played out in the parliament, right? So the whole country is being held to ransom because one party cannot fix its problems, right? So the leadership issue or the lack of democracy in the UNP or whatever the problem is or whatever is in this report has to be resolved by the UNP. All of us should not have to pay for this.
Yeah.
No, but unfortunately we are paying for it.
Unfortunately, we are having to pay for it. Similarly in the SLFP, there is a split. They can't figure out how to work out the split. And this is all being played out in the national parliament and in politics and in the government, right? So these are crises within political parties, and I think this election result and all of what we are seeing now shows the absolute, perhaps the dysfunctionality of the two main parties in this country. There is, unless there is serious reform in these two parties, there is really no way forward, there is no way out. And the two parties have to fix it. The parliament is not there for them to fix the problems of internal problems of a party.
Just one disagreement with Dr. because the similarity doesn't hold good for the SLFP in the same way as it holds to the UNP. UNP is a party intact and together, and inside they have a problem. Here in the SLFP, one section has broken away and formed a new party. So therefore it is left for the SLFP now to reform and go forward. This is slightly different, and which we are doing now. And what the President said in addressing the new councillors last week, he said, I mean, we have a very short time ahead of us, but this is more than enough for us to go forward and form our party and face the people. Let us do it.
Is that going to happen, Maitri?
They have gone forward, faced the people, but smashed.
No,
Right,
we have
because
done
why not smashed?
I am talking about the future.
No,
not what has happened.
SLFP.
No, you are going back to a situation. What we are now talking is from that situation, how do we go forward?
Now, with the split of the SLFP, Honorable Ranil Wickramasinghe was cock-a-hoop that they are going to romp home. What happened? What happened?
It was definitely a protest vote against the UNP.
Right. Then what happened was a new party, which was in existence only for 1 year, came and whacked both the main political parties out of sight. Right. So from that point onwards, if the SLFP is thinking that they can go forward and reorganize and make it a strong party, that is also their daydreaming. What they will have to do is, if they are serious, they will have to break bread with the joint opposition and come to some kind of term, come to some kind of agreement, and then that matter is sorted out, right? And as the Panditaratna report in 2004 has said, catastrophe has happened.
I want to get some clarification
this report of Mr. Panditaratna and 17 eminent people in this country has been, prophetic.
I just want to move away from politics, and I want to get some clarification from Dr. Harun Amarsurya. Dr. Amarsurya, you said that we don't have the technical know-how in order to nab financial crimes that are taking place. But if that was the case, why establish a financial crimes investigation division of the police, and you have a DIG appointed? The DIG goes in business class, travels to Dubai, comes back, goes again to Dubai, and then there is no breakthrough that comes out, because I recollect the same FCID said that a lot of money has been stashed away in Dubai and they have not been able to find this money. Then if you don't have the technical expertise to nab financial crimes, then why establish a financial crimes investigation division and the public pays for it?
Yeah, so but that was a gesture that had to be made, I think. Right? I mean, don't forget that in 2015 this government came into power on a promise of investigating all of these financial crimes. So they had to be seen to do something. Well, if they were sincere in their efforts and they sincerely wanted to do that, then they would have ensured that the FCID had the sufficient technical resources, capacity, capability, human or otherwise, to actually do what they had to do. But they've given it a sort of they've set it up, but they're not really behind it. Right, so I think that's the problem. So it's not that they couldn't not do anything. They made certain gestures.
Because when the arrest of Udayanga Veeratunga took place, the FCID members were not accompanied to Dubai, but it was the Attorney General's department individuals who were accompanied to Dubai. So I'm trying to figure out what is actually the role of the FCID now. Is it really a no-brainer, or must we just think, okay, let's close down operations, close shop, and then think of another alternative?
Well, I think what has happened is that the FCID is constrained in what it can do for whatever reasons. I think it's not one reason or the other. I think there are several factors which constrain what it does.
No, but Dr. Amarasuri, now my question is very simple. Right after the 2015 elections, we got the support of the Americans to find out where this money was. The experts from the United States came to Sri Lanka, advised the Sri Lankan police, the FCID, about how to nab money which has been stashed away. And 3 years down the line, we don't see any money stashed away, unfortunately.
Yeah, because I don't think the efforts were sincere, or that the efforts were whatever that was due to happen was allowed to happen independently without interference.
Or can I safe to say that the Americans are incompetent?
Well, perhaps that too. Who knows?
You just heard at the recently concluded Russian presidential elections, even the Russian voting system was rigged. I assume that the lady and the gentleman is aware of that as well, right? The Russian electoral system was also rigged. Anyway, we're going for a short commercial break. It's all happening in the world. It's all happening particularly in Sri Lanka. What is important to understand is we have to move forward. So stay connected, stay with Face the Nation, and when we come back, it's the final round. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. I want to start the final round with Maitri Gunratna, Attorney at Law, General Secretary of the United National Freedom Front. What is in store for us as a nation? We're now looking ahead. We're thinking we just passed one hurdle, that is the local government election, but there's another hurdle to pass, the provincial council elections. That's going to happen this year as well. Where are we really standing in this equation right now? What's going to happen next?
We all are lost after this election. One thing is that then one good thing is 80% of the candidates who have been voted in this time are new candidates. So 80% of the old brigade or the old the candidates or the members who are in the provincial in the local government bodies have been sent home, and 80% elected are new faces. So that was a direct result of this new system which the Yapalna government brought in, and I think the president must get the credit for that, because he is a person who saw to it that this new system came in and the elections were held. Now with the provincial council elections coming under the first past the post system or the mixed system, I feel 90% of the faces in the provincial councils also will change. This is very good. If we can somehow bring in the parliamentary election also into the same system, the first past the post, the mixed system, we will get rid of most of these jokers from parliament and new people will come in. That will only bring some kind of hope to this country. But I am told after the results of the local government elections, all the parliamentarians are deterred to go in for the change because they are going to lose their jobs. So therefore, they say that the parliamentary election system is not going to be changed. although the local government and the provincial council election systems have come to a new
But every single time they try to shuffle the pack with different systems being brought in, the jokers, however, still remain in this
No,
pack.
I don't think now even now the local government, 80% new faces. Now see Mr. Susripal Tennakon, new face, wealth of experience.
Your son, new face.
Definitely all new faces, young blood. So that is a good trend. I feel that's a good trend.
Now, Maitri, on a very personal note, I initially didn't want to ask you this question, but I want to ask you this question because we have to do justice by the people who are watching this program tonight.
Or you want to do injustice to me?
That's a different question altogether. That's for a different platform. But what makes you think that you are not like one of them? You had your son coming into the forefront. We saw that happening with Mahinda Rajapaksa as well, putting Namal Rajapaksa in the forefront, and that was initially the disaster that happened for the Rajapaksa family itself, putting the sons to the forefront and trying to play the games. And there was a time that President Mahinda Rajapaksa, after being defeated, even openly said, I didn't know what was happening. So now your son also comes into the forefront. What assurance can you give us on this very show, which is happening on Monday at 9:30 at Stein Studios on the 19th of March? What assurance can you give to the public that this won't be the case of the Gunaratnas as well?
Well, I can give an assurance that it's not going to be a case of what you're trying to portray. The main reason of the committee which sat on this was they wanted to get a qualified person to sit in the Colombo Municipal Council as a new party. We had about 20 candidates who worked hard, and if we appointed, we'll say, one candidate from one ward, that candidate would have only worked for that ward in particular. But by getting a person who can work for the whole Colombo Municipal Council, then we will be able to look after the 20 candidates who work towards the betterment of the party and strengthen the party at the next local government elections. So the thinking of the committee was that. And
so let's say hypothetically, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe steps down as the leader of the United National Party. Let's be a little bit optimistic at the end of the show. Would that mean that Maitri Gunaratne is going to join the UNP again?
Not certain yet. Not certain. I mean, it all depends on who is going to come and what the plan is going to be. If the person who is going to join or be the UNP leader after this has no vision, has no plan, is not willing to take the party forward, how can we join? And
who is the person who you recommend can take the post of UNP leadership right now? I know you can't probably say a name immediately, but I
can suggest a name.
Yes, suggest a name.
I think at the moment, one of the most senior persons in the party is Mr. Ranjit Madhubandar, and Mr. Ranjit Madhubandar has maybe 30 years of experience. I think after Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, he is one of the most senior people in Parliament. He may be a good bet to at least win in as a temporary leader who will be able to.
Why temporary? Who can be the permanent leader of the UN?
No. For the time being.
For the interim.
Interim period to stabilize the party.
Thank you very much.
Because too many people in the last 24 years under Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe's reign have left the party. So I think there has to be a long-standing person who can come forward and stabilize the party. And if that only person who can do it, I feel now, will be a person like Mr. Ranjit Madhubandar.
Thank you very much.
And thereafter, Mr. Sajid Premadas
and all can find their way. General Secretary of the United National Freedom Front. It seems to me that you've been very well let down by the person who you were hanging on to.
I have not been let down. No, there is absolutely. I have not been let down. Politics is a game where people are sometimes let down, but all in the game. All in the game. I mean,
I remember
politics is not a SIL campaign.
I remember
Sarat Fonseca. When you do politics, there are people who let you down. There are very few people who stand by you. So that happens, and when you come into this, you have to expect it.
I remember.
I'm not surprised at all.
I remember, Maitri, when Sarat Fonseca, General Sarat Fonseca, was contesting the presidential election. He had a media briefing at one of the hotels in Colombo, and I happened to be at this hotel. He started off saying something very interesting. He said, "There are no enemies and friends in politics," and that is why he decided to become the common candidate of the United National Party. So I think you bear the same sentiment at this point. So I want to now move my attention to Mr. Rusil Palathendakoon. I want to end tonight's show with a public opinion from Dr. Harini Amarasuri. Hence, I'm now moving towards you, Mr. Rusil Palathendakoon. If it's a usual format, I always would end up with you. But tonight, unfortunately, you don't hold that post as the civil rights activist in the platform, but goes as
he has abdicated that post.
So, Mr. Thendakoon, the next few months, the next few years is going to be, fortunately, unfortunately, very crucial for President Maithripala Sirisena. He is on the balance, and that is a fact at the moment. In your opinion, what must the President do now and gather himself and move forward? If he is to do that, what must he do at this point of time, even in terms of the no confidence motion? Your time starts now.
I think he has already started the process. He knows that this is a problem that within the UNP, and that problem has now come out to the open. He will give time for the UNP to settle it among themselves, and he will call upon somebody whom he thinks can command the respect of the parliament. You know, the question of majorities doesn't arise here. When Ranil Wickremesinghe was first appointed the Prime Minister after the 8th January 2015 the change, the UNP had only 60 seats.
43.
I mean, altogether, people who have crossed over everything, 40 odd seats with them, and altogether 60 people. So therefore, the majority did not arise. So long as the President takes a firm stand, he is in a very strong position to give a few days more for the UNP to decide their debacle and then come out of the mess. If they don't, he is in a position to name a person who he thinks can command the respect of the parliament. Confidence of the parliament.
Who will he choose?
I think to be very fair and to be very sort of impartial, I should say, if it is a question of seniority in the party and protocol order, next to the Prime Minister, the Speaker. He can call upon the Speaker to, okay, you be the Prime Minister and you form the party. And
but Karan Jayasuriya has already told that he doesn't want to become the...
He has already said he can't.
No, those are things. He will change his position. He will reconsider his position depending on the situation. Of course, the situation was not there at the time when he was asked to, he was sort of consulted first. Maybe if he is consulted now with the developments that have taken place, he might give a different answer. Whatever it is, I am just thinking of the seniority and the protocol order. Prime Minister, Speaker. If the Speaker is asked and called upon by the President to be the Prime Minister, I am sure what is not surfaced from the UNP will surface, and we can see who is going to support and who is going to stay out.
Mr. Thendakoon, if I don't ask you this question again, I will not do justice by the viewers who are watching this program. Are you trying to say that there is no one from the Sri Lanka Freedom Party that the President can't appoint as the Prime Minister of this resplendent nation?
No, I am purely going on the basis of the majority of the party, that number of seats being held by the UNPs. I am thinking democratically.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rusil Palathendakoon. I now move my attention to Dr. Harini Amarasuri, Senior Lecturer at the Open University. You've heard two politicians, I must say, and three journalists. As a citizen of this nation, do you see a glimmer of hope for Sri Lanka in the next few months, in the next 18 months in particular? And after these 18 months, what's going to happen next? I know you don't have a magic ball in front of you to predict the future, but what's going to happen next? Your time starts now.
Okay, so I think it is a really critical point in our history, and perhaps out of chaos something good can also happen. You know, sometimes you have to sink to the very depths before you can re-emerge and sort of reinvent yourself. So maybe this crisis will drive us to reinvent ourselves in new ways. At least that's my hope. I don't know whether that will be the reality, but that's certainly my hope. And I think for that to happen also, as citizens, we have a role to play. I think we have a really important role to play right now, because our politicians have failed us. Our mainstream political parties have failed us. So it is time for us as citizens to get our act together and do what is necessary for this country. And my hope is once again that we don't resort to very sort of parochial, very narrow kind of ways of resolving our issues. In some ways, I saw the protest vote against this government and the way in which the local government election results came out as in some ways very self-defeating also, because the elements that we have brought into government, even though they may be new faces, do not represent a great vision or a great ideology, right? And I think
yet to be traced.
Some are yet to be traced. So I think that's kind of problematic. I think what happened was that people were really angry, and they showed their anger in the worst possible way, probably. And I'm hoping that out of this, we can come into something better, that the chaos, the depths to which we have sunk, is the very push that we require for us to act more responsibility and to actually claim our role as citizens of this country, and to play a far more active role. That's my hope.
Dr. Amar Surya, unfortunately, I have a final question for you as well. Again, if I don't pose this question to you, I won't be doing justice by the people of Sri Lanka. You have a gentleman on your right who is also a politician, and a gentleman on your left who is also a politician. Do you believe any one of them at this point of time to take Sri Lanka to the next level?
Do I believe the two gentlemen
Yes.
on my two? Since I've only met them for the first time today, that's a bit of a tough question for me to answer. My default position on this is that I don't believe what politicians say. I would prefer to see what they do, and then I can make that kind of judgment. I certainly don't believe them at face value. I think that's a little difficult, and that's certainly not what we have experienced in the past several years.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harini Amar Surya, Senior Lecturer at the Open University. Thank you very much, Maitri Gunratna. It's always a pleasure to have you on board. I must tell you, it's always good to hear your thoughts about, in particular about the United National Party, which you were a staunch supporter of at one particular time. But you have to take to heart what Dr. Amar Surya said. There's a lot on your shoulder at this moment of time as a politician, as an individual, because just fielding a political party alone won't do. You have to take Sri Lanka to the next level, so a lot of burden on your shoulders. Thank you very much for joining us tonight on the show, as always.
Thank you very much for the
Thank you very much, Mr. Risiripala Tendakon, for joining us this evening on the show. That burden that Dr. Amar Surya was pointing out falls straight onto your shoulder now. You have a very big responsibility to play. My fervent hope is that on this very show we won't be able to expose one of your corrupt activities. I hope we will never face that situation.
I don't think that will happen. In fairness to you, I don't think.
You're a very genuine man. You voiced your concerns, your opinions on Face the Nation, and we pray for the best for you and your family, and congratulate you once again on your appointment as a councillor. Thank you very much, Nadeem, and thank you very much, Charita, for joining us this evening. It's always a pleasure to have you both on my left. Unfortunately, Nadeem is not on to my right today. Thank God for that. So thank you very much, gentlemen and the lady, for joining us this evening on the show. I leave you tonight with a quote, as I always do. This is something witty tonight. He knows nothing and he thinks he knows everything. That points clearly to a political career. Take care and good night. Newsfirst.